Formula One launch season continued, and it was F1's most famous team that was up to date, Ferrari, as they unveiled the new F1-75 car. I'm joined by Autosport Grand Prix editor Alex Kalinauckas to go over the new Ferrari. As you can see behind us, it's very new. It looks very different to its predecessor, and without wishing to quote a much-used meme from the Amazon McLaren series, it's red.
Yeah, I know. I've seen it. So it's not as good as the Netflix series that way. But anyway,
true. Anyway,
you can't have everything.
No. But it's red. It's red and black. It's a very different design to what we saw last year. Obviously, they've no longer got the Philip Morris sponsorship and stuff. But what were your thoughts on the livery, the important stuff to begin with here?
Oh, I mean, yeah. Let's go for the superficial elements of what we're going to discuss. No, I'm kidding. It's absolutely gorgeous. There's no. I mean, like just look at it. It's really nice. It's like darker red than they've had the last few years, and basically it's evocative. It's going back to the livery they ran from most of the 80s all the way up into 1994. I mean, it calls to mind mostly the Ferrari 641, the successful Alain Prost one in 1990 and things like that. And also it's got a little inlet on the nose. You can't actually see it. It's unfortunately down below on the desk where the nose meets the wing. There's a little inlet in there, and it's sort of similar that the 641 had an inlet as well. So yeah, it's great. What I really like about so many of the cars we've seen so far have been absolutely gorgeous. I think Aston Martin was leading the way until this thing was done.
Okay, so this is your number one now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, red is my favourite colour, so there's a little bit of bias there in terms of literally just about colours before anybody gets any ideas about what that means. But yeah, it's just gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous, and it's not cluttered and complicated, and it's kind of weird because the Ferrari race suits that the drivers are wearing today, and we've seen them in those t-shirts that they released, they look awful. I mean, they are overly complicated and just look bizarre. This is just gorgeous, but in terms of better than last year, because it had sort of the weird, the back end of the car was that sort of like that they ran in the Tuscan Grand Prix when they were celebrating 1,000 races. That was sort of more maroon, and then when the mission
it was the green Mission winner. Yeah, it didn't really fit, did it? No,
it was just too much of a mishmash. So I really like what Ferrari's done.
Very good work, Ferrari. Probably more important than what it actually looks like is technically. I mean, what have you spotted? I mean, the nose looks really quite narrow and radical compared to what we've seen. The side pods as well. I mean, it sort of really stands out from the other cars we've seen so far.
Right, so overall, basically the takeaway is that this is the most radical car or design that has been produced to these new regulations from what we've seen so far. Who knows what Red Bull has produced though, because of course they're still insisting that a show car is their actual car for some ridiculous and annoying reason. But yeah, from compared to all the other ones, it's got so many different ideas on it. I think we'll come on later on to, is it too much or is it spot on? It could be, is it the Trailblazer, things like that. But yeah, the nose is sort of the standout thing because it's a modular design. So basically, essentially Ferrari looks like they might be able to swap in and out lots of different designs, ideas, geometries, things like that. But also potentially the way it connects onto the front wing flap, which none of the other cars do. The AlphaTauri does in the images released so far, and of course so does the Red Bull, but that's a show car. They're attaching in the same way, but we think those noses are going to potentially be different. But in terms of like the Aston and the McLaren and the Williams, don't do that. Certainly about the Aston and the McLaren. Potentially you could swap that out really quickly. Just, if like a wing's damaged in a race or something, it's a little bit of difference to what we've seen before. But the side pods as well, like incredibly sort of sculpted and flowing. They just look like bits of art, let's face it, and one of those gills cut in there, the Aston has those as well. I think they look really nice, really aggressive. But actually, weirdly, I sort of struck me during the launch video, and I've sort of seen it referenced elsewhere. It kind of looks, those samples kind of look a little bit from certain angles like the 2011 McLaren, where they have the sort of the shapes up in different ways. It's just, it's a really interesting car. And then they've also gone back with the roll hoop, which obviously you can sort of see in the black. I'm trying to point my hand up there. It's gone back to sort of triangular design that they had in 2020 with the horns and everything. They got rid of that last year. So hopefully this car is a lot quicker than the SF1000 because that was not a good car.
That's not a very high bar you're setting. Not a high bar, so no. I think, but on that, for Ferrari this season, they've always seen the new regs as being a big opportunity to get back to being F1's top team. 2020, that was their worst season in 40 years. Last year, they made a huge step forward to get third in the Constructors' Championship. But right the way through last season, Mattia Binotto, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, they're like, we're Ferrari, we're not here to finish third, we're here to win. So this is such an important car for them. Going into this season, there's a lot of expectation, I think, hype around them. Surely Ferrari have to be back. Surely this season they have to be up there and fight for a championship to consider this year a success.
Totally, and if they're wondering why they're being picked as like the dark horses, or the suggestion that they are going to do really well this year. They've only got themselves to blame, because they're constantly going, well, 2022, it's the big opportunity. Obviously, all the teams were saying that, but yeah, Ferrari have constantly been like, right, we're rebuilding, we're becoming winners again. This is our opportunity. So they've heaped the pressure on themselves, but equally, it was also a natural way of deflecting their pressures and tensions in the last couple of years. But it is a big year for Ferrari, because not only, in terms of like just looking at the driver lineup, it's their second year as teammates now. We know Leclerc was already long established there. Sainz came in, did I think better than even he probably expected. He had a tremendous season last year, finished 5th in the driver standings, beating Leclerc, beating Norris. I think Leclerc, he had the sort of lion's share of the bad luck. And if you look at all of Sainz's podiums, they all do involve an element of luck. Obviously, sure. Yeah, you put yourself in a position to capitalise. So of course, well done to him. But yeah, they're both together now. We know they work very well together. They get on well together. That's why that just adds that extra sort of sense of, something could really, really be happening here. But as you said, Luke, it's the rate of progression that they showed last year from coming back from an awful 2020, the worst in 40 years, as you say, got back to 3rd place, beat McLaren, which was doing very, very well, operating very, very well. That sets the expectations well, right? So presumably they're going to make another step, and it would be logical to think that. So it's Ferrari have created the expectations themselves, but also they are showing that progress. They are demonstrating that they're doing things well. So a very big year, and I'm really excited to see what Ferrari can do in 2022.
Definitely, yeah. And there's other aspects as well. I mean, the aero rules, they've sort of like weighed it out. It's a bit like the NFL draft, where if you're the worst team, you get sort of first pick. Obviously, Ferrari, they have more wind tunnel time compared to the likes of Red Bull and Mercedes, because they finished lower down the Constructors' Championship, so that should play in their favour. They've got a new simulator online as well. That should also help in terms of car correlation and everything. Charles Leclerc, he said himself, like, we have high expectations. Like, this is such a big year. And that driver dynamic, I mean, that's really important. And they were asked today, like, that team orders, and it was quite nice. Like, all three of them chipped in and said, look, we had a really good conversation about this over the last few days. We are free to fight, but it's just exciting that they're even sort of thinking about that again. So it's definitely moving the right way for Ferrari. You mentioned the drivers and how well they're getting on the driver front as well. Carlos Sainz Jr., that brilliant first season with Ferrari last year. Mattia Binotto, he said in December that they would open negotiations. They would talk about a new deal, extending Sainz's contract even after just one season with the team. Sainz gave an update on that. He even said at one point, I've got something to announce. What did he announce?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned just previously about, what's going to happen in terms of what happens when they race each other in 2022. Because things did get pretty spicy on track.
It's Saudi Arabia, wasn't it? It's pretty dicey.
Leclerc's move, and there's a good battle right at the end. They're big boys. They know exactly how to handle these things. But in terms of Sainz, as you say, he did exactly that. He provided a complete update to what Binotto had said. It's going to be like, we're going to open negotiations over the off-season, and that's what happened. Sainz saying they are in the middle of discussions right now. What's interesting with this is that it just seems that an extension is almost a formality. That's the positive noises coming out of both sides, because Ferrari, it just makes complete sense, because Sainz has slotted in alongside Leclerc. Nothing's been destabilised, and he's got tremendous results, and he's almost on an upward trajectory. I know the team is just very impressed at how sort of level-headed and calm he is, because he's moved to Ferrari. It's the biggest and best historically team in Formula One. That can have an effect on drivers, and it's just not changed him at all. So they're very impressed by that. But what is interesting is when he says they're in the middle of discussions, the question is going to be, will he get the mega deal, the long-term deal that Leclerc got? So running for 5 seasons, you've still got 3 years to go on that contract. That's obviously what Sainz would want. Of course, a driver would want a long-term deal. He's older than Leclerc, so that's why. And would Ferrari want to go down giving an older driver? But he's not old in any sense of the word, but in terms of just compared to Leclerc, given that the other driver that sort of same deal. But with that, what I would say is that that could be the potential sticking point, because if he's really pushing for that, and Ferrari are like, we're not quite sure, you haven't quite earned it yet, because he hasn't got the same sort of victories and the actual success Leclerc has gone on to, even though he's, as you say, looked very, very good in 2021. That could be a potential sticking point, but you would sense, or I would predict, judging by what they've said, the noises coming out from both sides, from both Ferrari and both Sainz's camp, you'd expect it to be a formality that will get a new contract. Yeah,
I think it's going to be a very easy news story for us in the coming weeks and months to be covering. And back on the car side, we mentioned 2020 earlier, that sort of terrible year for Ferrari. And so much of that was down to the power unit. We know it was underperforming for various reasons that we do know about. With the engine freeze coming in for 2022, it's effective very, very soon. Ferrari, they made such a big step forward with that power unit last year, the updated hybrid system as well that came in towards the end of the year. That really settled that battle for third place with McLaren in the Constructors' Championship. So I guess that's positive momentum, but how crucial is it for Ferrari to get everything right with its power unit before the freeze comes in, not just for this season, but for the coming years as well?
Yeah, so the freeze is really the key thing, because all the power unit manufacturers are going to need to have their most powerful and most reliable engines, because it's going to be disastrous if your engine is breaking down every 5 minutes right at the beginning of this season. But yeah, with Ferrari, as you say, that it was only the hybrid system that they introduced towards the end of 2021. Effectively, what they were saying was, we're actually just doing this to prepare for 2022. It just happened to have a tremendous impact on the team, but it's good because it showed that it worked. So they'll be hoping that all the other innovations or the other upgrades that they're introducing work as successfully, and it's good with the hybrid system. They've got a track record of doing it. When it's all put together, will it be as successful? Will it be make as much of a gain? Who knows? But anyway, it's a good sign. It's a very good sign for Ferrari. Then, of course, you've got the new fuel coming in. I know Mercedes has said that the innovations and things that they were able to find with Petronas played a big part in their engines doing so well for so many years. So, there's a real sort of sense around Ferrari. Hope, they were quite keen to point it out, let's put it that way, Mattia Binotto, in that press conference earlier. But I think just going back to this amazing looking car behind us, and with the engine incorporated in that, is it a trailblazer? Is this the car that everybody else is going to end up copying? Because everybody's saying, including Binotto today, Laurent Mecchi said it to you in the interview that you did with him in Abu Dhabi, that the cars are all going to converge. It's really interesting that they all look so different at the moment, but there is going to be one design is going to be so much better than the others. Maybe not by all that much, but it is going to be the one that wins, because of course that's how that's how motorsport works. So is Ferrari the trailblazer, or is it gone too radical? Because so much of it is different and so much of it is interesting. That's going to be like a really key, really important and big story to follow as 2022 starts.
Yeah, definitely could be a boom or bust approach maybe. But I mean, if it is boom and Ferrari do find themselves at the top of F1 again, we said at the start, it is F1's most famous team. It's the best well-known brand. It's the most successful team. How important for F1 is a strong Ferrari, a good Ferrari, just for the sport as a whole? Because they've had these two sort of fallow years, and to be finally taking a big step forward again and be up there fighting at the front, that's good for the sport, surely.
Massively. I mean, you say 2 fallow years, but they haven't won a title since 2008 in the Constructors' Championship. That's, it was such a big deal. I can remember growing up, such a big deal made of Ferrari not winning a title since Jody Scheckter, and then Michael Schumacher finally doing it in 2020. All of that momentum, everything built up, and it became a massive story. And it's got to get to that point now. It's a really long time ago, 2008 now, when you think about it, as depressing as that may be. I think I was just in the middle of my A-levels.
Yeah, wow.
But anyway, you presumably had not started second.
No, I was in year 9 at that point. So yeah.
Fair enough. But yeah, a good Ferrari is good for Formula One because of it's just such an evocative team. It's like an emotionally charged thing with Ferrari, because that's the whole thing. That's the Italian, Latin passion, but it just breeds that. It just breeds something interesting into Formula One as well. But also, it's just a variation. Mercedes dominated for so long, and of course, well done to them. But when Red Bull were able to fight at the front last year, everyone got more interested in Formula One. And if Ferrari can either be added into that mix, or maybe it's Ferrari taking on another team, that's fantastic. Even if at the moment, it's saying that it is a trailblazing car, the SF-75, sorry, it's not SF.
F1-75, yeah, because they keep changing their naming designations.
They confuse me constantly with this, No consistency. Anyway, even if it's the Ferrari at the front, that's enough of a change people would be interested in. You've got 2 balanced teammates. That could be a really, really good fight, even of itself. Also, great livery to have at the front. That'd be pretty cool to see on TV cameras all the time.
Look good on the Autosport cover, I think.
Oh, definitely. And obviously we're red as well, so that would be a nice matching thing there. But also, it's going back to what I was saying about it being so long since they've won. In all sports. Look at the Cincinnati Bengals in the Super Bowl for the first time in years and years and years. That's why that was a bigger story, and why it was like so much more interesting, because it's this team hasn't won, or I know they haven't won any Super Bowls at the moment. But it's that it's an oft-told story across sport. This coming back, this fallen giant coming back to be successful would be really good to see. What I would say is, once again, Ferrari doesn't really have an excuse if it does fail again. It's got these great facilities. It's got the massive base at Maranello. McLaren are behind because they're invested in their facilities, but they haven't come on song yet. So it's not that they're behind. They're just that's what we picked up at the launch. They're preparing the ground for, we might not do as well as we want with these new regulations, but we're going to get there. Ferrari It's got everything. It's got that new sim
Yep.
online. Everything should be working. And if you sort of look for most of Formula One's history or most of Ferrari's history, it's kind of underperformed. It's had periods of being totally successful and long periods of like, well, hang on a minute, what's this super team doing not winning? So yeah.
So
good
no
if they're
excuses.
there, but no excuse if they're not.
It's a big year for Ferrari, definitely. Alex, thank you very much for going all of that with me. Yeah, it's a big year for Ferrari. It's a beautiful looking car. It's going to be really good to see on the grid. And yeah, that's another one ticked off for F1 launch season. And we've got Mercedes, who of course will be trying to continue their streak of constructors titles and regain that driver's crown with Lewis Hamilton or potentially George Russell, who of course joins the team for this year. We'll have all of the analysis and news, of course, on Autosport and motorsport.com. And yeah, we'll be back tomorrow with another recap of the Mercedes launch.